People are always asking me what is the purpose of Tools of the Humans, and I like to answer listening to stories and learning from them. In one of the past episodes, we had a star here, Pauline, who went through a process of healing from multiple falls on the bike, and then developing PTSD. She wasn't able to walk, and finally, through help, she was able to get back to her normal life. Today, we're talking again with Pauline, with the host of the show, Russ Hemmings, who helped her out, figure out how to fix her phobias and to go on with their lives. This is Tools of the Humans. I am TC, and I will host the episode with Russell Hemmings. It's so easy to walk, and it's so easy to be blocked by phobias up to the point that we cannot walk anymore. How powerful are the thoughts? Today we have Pauline, who has been a star of this show already. And this is Tools of the Humans. I'm TC, Russell Hemmings. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hey.
Pauline, already you told us the story of your journey in the journey, okay? What happened in the last 2 years?
I just had two accidents. So I'm doing triathlon, as all of you know, and I had two bike crash, and that led to then some phobia, post-traumatic disorder. I don't know, Russell will tell us more exactly what was it, but yeah. So yeah, for a lot of months I struggle actually to not to ride but to walk, which is a bit, I know, weird and strange, but I could not go out. I had to limit my activities, so basically it was home work, and yeah, for a good 2 or 3 months, I think, until I met with Russell.
The way that you explain it is you're such a lady. That's not how you explained it to me. It was more dramatic. And I remember, I'll never forget the story you told me where you're cycling at high speed and you go over the handlebars and you snap your collarbone and you're lying in the road and the ambulance comes and you get taken away. And then you patiently waited for, what was it? How many weeks? 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
Oh, that was, yeah, a good 8 weeks to recover. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're a woman that your whole life is exercise and getting out there. So it wouldn't be like me, you know, if I broke my collarbone for 6 weeks, nothing would change, you know, but so your whole life was changed. And you probably were really frustrated, I think. And then you went out again, didn't you? Tell us about that, because something happened, didn't it? I mean, with the bicycle.
Of course. Yeah. So yeah, as you said, for 8 weeks I had to be patient. But then when you know that, it's fine. You can deal with it. But slowly the confidence come back. So yeah, I've decided to then get back again on my triathlon bike. So it was literally my first ride again out in Medan. Yeah, they did not fix well the handlebar. So yeah, so it just fell off. And again, I had the second, it's not really a crash, it's not just an accident, unfortunately. And again, I fractured my collarbone, the same one. And I had a lot of wounds, and yeah, I lost a lot of skin on that day. So yeah, and since
you're now the bionic woman, you've got a plate in there, haven't you?
I do, yeah. Have a nice
bolts and screws
for when it happens again. You strengthened it.
Exactly.
You know, so now when you came to see me, I remember you were wearing a nice T-shirt. It said Iron Man. So you literally are Iron Woman.
I do, yeah. Yes.
I'm really curious because, you know, after 2 accidents, basically she cannot walk anymore. And, you know, you would have expect like, okay, I'm not going to ride, you know, I will never ride the bicycle anymore. Not a TT bike, forget about it. Maybe a mountain bike, maybe a, you know, one of those fat bikes with the big tires, you know, like, but you couldn't walk. So this is something that we were like, how can happen that of the most complicated situations there and a big crash that is involving a, you know, a mechanized vehicle and stuff like this. Now the simplest thing is removed from your routine. This is, you know, as you said, is a phobias. You know, so how do phobias start?
I mean, until now, I'm still also having hard time to understand really what happened. I mean, I know, you know, but it's so difficult to really understand that. And yeah, riding, I have no issue. I mean, I went even mountain biking. I went gravel biking on some very steep downhill. I was fine. And then, yeah, one day it's just fear of the change in the ground, the color. The marble was my, I think, as Russell knows, my one enemy. And in the IFC where my office is, it's all marble. Yep. So the struggle was real.
I mean, we have a mutual friend, and he called me one evening, and he said to me, Russell, I want you to help a good friend of mine. I said, yeah, okay, no problem. She's had an accident. She's gone head over heels on a race bike, and she's hit the floor, broke bones. And, you know, I just jumped in and said, yep, okay, I'll help, no problem. He goes, no, there's more to the story. I goes, okay, what's the rest of the story? He said, well, 6 weeks later after she healed, it happened again. I went, whoa, okay, bring her in. He goes, no, there's more to the story. I said, more to the story? He said, yeah, well, after she healed, she went back to work and she found that she was having panic attacks, anxiety, just by walking. It's like, okay, this is more complicated. Okay, bring her in, and thanks for sharing. So Pauline arrived. What happens is when people, well, first of all, phobias don't necessarily develop because of a traumatic event. In your case, it was a traumatic event, but the phobias can be learned. I have 3 people in my family, all the girls, my mom and my 2 sisters, they had a phobia of spiders, which I was really pleased about, because in my youth, I would be chasing them around with my hands like that, and they'd be all screaming and going out the room saying, put it down, but there was nothing in my hands. But my mother had a phobia of spiders, and obviously when she saw a spider, she'd scream out. And when her daughters were very small, they saw that my mom was scared of something, and they looked and saw a spider. So they developed a phobia themselves. So it was not from a trauma, it was just learned from a family member. So a lot of phobias happen like that. None of us are born with a phobia, but then we can also have a traumatic event which can develop a phobia. So what happens is, when we experience something traumatic in the mind, the hippocampus communicates to a small area in the brain called the amygdala. And it's just a fancy word. It's Greek for almond, because it's the size of an almond. And within the amygdala, there is held the emotions, and it's really there to protect us in primitive times when there was a lot of dangers around, and we still possess this. Our body and brain is similar to our primitive ancestors, but it stores trauma and things that happen to us that create fear. So if, for instance, let's say you're in Africa, and one of our ancestors is walking along, and out jumps from behind the bushes saber-toothed tiger and starts running towards you, and you know your life's in danger. You don't stop and think. You make a dash for the village to get back, or you climb a tree. And let's say you escape. Your mind has taken a picture, a photograph, and that's stored in that area I spoke about earlier, the amygdala. And so let's say 6 months later, that person who's escaped is out with their friends, with their tribe, and the wind blows the bushes, and suddenly he's off up a tree again, and his friends are wondering what's happening. And what's happened is the amygdala has released the messages to the mind and the body: you're in danger, get out of there. So it's a very useful technique, and it's matching a scary event to protect you in the future. So what's happened is the first trauma that you had was strong enough to create a phobic response, but having a second one, it sort of cemented it. But what's curious is, as Tommaso said, why did it affect her when she was walking? Why? And the question is, why did it not make you phobic of bicycles, for instance, or or cycling? And that's what we call a mismatch. And mismatches happen. And what happens is I'll give you an example how it works. There was an experiment with a monkey that they put an electrical charge into a banana, and they electrocuted the monkey when it reached for the banana. And so the monkey learned, it was only a small charge, but it was uncomfortable. So the monkey learned that when they touched the banana to go and eat it, they'd get a shock. So it soon learned to avoid that. But what was interesting is when they introduced other objects which were yellow, and they used a rubber, one of these ducks that you put in the bath, and they introduced it to the monkey became hysterical because there was a mismatch. He thought that all yellow things were going to create the same effect. So that experiment shows us that we can get things which are similar but not relevant. So when you went over the handlebars and you were falling, your body tried to protect you when you were walking. So in the future, when you're out walking to your office on that marble floor, which you would have not considered slippy, you'd have just walked over it before the accidents, but your mind started to create fear, or the fight or flight response, when you walked on a surface, and then it started to transfer to other surfaces. So when we went out to measure the work that we did with you, you were referring to on the running track, there was sort of a shiny surface, wasn't there? And you felt those feelings come back when you were walking on the shiny surface. So it's a mismatch, really. It's a faulty, shall we say, it's a fault that happens to us humans because the mind doesn't have to receive the exact fear stimulus. It could be something similar. And it happened with I know a lady that was raped, and the perpetrator was wearing green trousers, and it was many years ago, but she came into my office in England, and I was wearing green trousers, and she went into a panic attack, and luckily I had some jeans, and I got changed quickly and came back into the room, but she was re-traumatized. It triggered her. So the brain stores these things to help us, really, to help us survive. And that's what happened to you.
I have a question for Pauline. When you felt like falling, where you were walking, but were you visualizing what happened on the bike, or was it just unconscious that you were triggered to, don't want to walk anymore? And, so it's an easy thing, walking. And, the trauma is big because you fell and you broke bones and you had scars. Were you visualizing that? I mean, was it connected were you aware that it was connected to what happened before? Probably in hindsight, you can say, yeah, but at the moment it was happening.
Not at all. I really clearly did not know what's happening. So obviously you go through, okay, it started also with high heart rate, difficulty to breathe, you know, when you start, you can't breathe with your belly and you start to block everything. So I was, okay, it's stress. And I was like, okay, there's something. So you go, you do the full health checkup, nothing. So I'm like, oh my God, am I crazy? But at no point I picture anything related to the accident. So I could not really think it was linked. And the funny thing is, it was just, so the symptoms then when I was walking, it was only on my left leg. It was just more like numb, like I wasn't really grounded. So I could not, on the left side, I could not really feel properly the ground. So it was a bit of a loss of balance as well, but only on the left side. So I always had my right side that was solid. On the left side, it's yeah, very weird symptom to explain, to be honest. But yeah, a bit numb. That side wasn't grounded. Yeah, loss of balance. But at no point I related this to the accident, to a mental health, problem, because it's really a mental problem. So I try to figure out from the list what could be like the new disease or anything, you know.
Yeah, and this is when Russell comes. This is when Russell comes,
yeah,
right?
exactly. And
Because
then Russell comes, and then I was happy that to put a name on actually what's happening. And it was like, it's fine, a lot of people like that, so it's okay, and we can cure you, you know. It's not, you won't stay all your life like that. I think that's just what I wanted to hear. And I think that's been the best day, when it just mentioned that it's okay, it will pass, and one day I will remember this, it's going to be just a memory, and I will even laugh at it. So I was, okay, fine, then what to do?
there was in the episode with Pauline, the tool that we spoke about, you know, going for help, looking for help. You know, sometimes people, they find in this situation and doesn't look for help, and good on her that it was like, okay, you know, this is something wrong here. And being surrounded by people that are friends and close, she was able to get to you. And you finally found out that there was this memory that was triggering, right?
Yeah, I mean, for people that don't seek help, phobias and trauma don't heal on their own. They can get worse. And I can only imagine, you know, Pauline, if you weren't able to run and cycle and swim the way you do, and you live a very active life, more than most, I think that would have probably led to depression as well. And a lot of people that don't overcome traumas and phobias, they, as a secondary, they can become depressed over it. Luckily, she was able to move on, and we were able to reverse the problem. So she didn't become depressed, but I imagine you'd have felt very sad, wondering about what's going to happen in the future. When I took you out to after we did the hypnosis, I wanted to see, which I often do with people if they have a fear, whether it's dogs or you know, stairs. I had a lady once who had a fear of stairs. I need to get from behind the desk, you know. And when I was out on the running track with you, well, the first time just below my office, we went running, didn't we? And I could see that you were focusing on that leg. And one of the symptoms in fear is our digestive system shuts down, and the blood's not required. You don't need to what's the phrase? You don't need to eat a meal while running away from a tiger. So you are fearing the feelings, and so the digestive system shuts down, and the blood goes into the legs. So you get this, what the expression jelly-legged, or there was this sensation of heaviness in your legs, and particularly in one leg, wasn't it? So I did notice this. You were looking at it, and you were also, you could see it was interfering with the walking. So we had to explain all that to you, what it was happening, give you an explanation, because without the explanation, you'd fear that, hang on, there's something seriously wrong here. But and that would give you more fear. And then more fear means more symptoms, and then more symptoms then creates a loop. It's like there's something really wrong. So just an explanation of what some of the symptoms that you are getting is sufficient enough for you to go, oh, okay, so we're normalizing it. So going back to what we did, in hypnosis, we can go back to a memory and reconstruct the appropriate emotions that you would want to have when you're walking, and remove the fight or flight response from past memories. So we had to deconstruct that, and we used hypnosis to do that. And then we went out after each session and just watched her run. And the first time she could run, but there was a lot of thoughts going on, and you could see when she turned around. Do you remember that when you were running around that lamppost and you turn around and you're like, oh, I'm not steady on my feet, I don't like turning, you know, because, and one of the other side effects of fear is the breathing changes, and we over oxygenate in our brain and create too much oxygen, which makes us dizzy. So that you possibly were getting a dizzy feeling as well, like a vertigo feeling. So we saw that, but each session we saw improvement in the running, but there was some residual memory, and so we used a different technique other than hypnosis, which we call EMDR. Which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and that's a very useful technique. So it's useful to have different techniques to use in combination to help remove the fears and the trauma.
Let's open a parenthesis on generally hypnosis, because I'm not familiar with it. I mean, I'm familiar because I talked to you, but you know, for the audience, how does it work? Okay, you basically you are mapping and recoding, you know, people's brain. You know, the most probably you can have the question: is it dangerous? Like you're gonna, you know, take control of my mind and stuff like this? Because when people are generally thinking about hypnosis, they're thinking about, oh, this is some voodoo thing going on. But the reality is,
yeah, you blame Hollywood for that. In the first session, the first thing I'd do is, with anybody, not just Pauline, was, what do you know about hypnosis? And some people will say, I know a lot about hypnosis, I've done it before, it helped me before in the past. Or in Pauline, I don't think you'd had hypnosis before, had you?
No, never.
And you were familiar with it. So most people are familiar with the sort of Hollywood, you know, impression, where there's usually a fob watch and people are, you know, all that. I often say I don't have one of those watches and don't need one, but that's the impression. So you have to educate the client that you're in full control. You don't sleep. That's a misconception. People think you sleep in hypnosis. You didn't sleep, did you?
No, not at all, no.
You are actively visualizing some of the things that I was recommending that you visualize. So at any time she could have opened her eyes and come back into the room, but she didn't want to because she was focusing on improvement work. So you don't lose control. You can't make anybody do anything against their will. You know, I think I'd have retired years ago if that was the case. I would have visited my bank manager and hypnotized him. But no, you can't make anyone do anything against their will. But I think Hollywood and Bollywood, they've produced a number of movies. My first memory was Jungle Book, where the little boy was in the tree with the, you know, with the snake saying "go to sleep," and his bear, Baloo, came and saved him. So, and the snake, remember the snake with the spiraling eyes saying "go to sleep, trust in me." I think that's where we get this idea, this misconception and then we forget about it, and then we have this preconceived idea that that's what hypnosis is about. It's nothing like that. Now, you know, Harvard Medical School has done some amazing work hypnotizing students and putting them in fMRI scanners where they can actually see what's happening in the brain. So there's a part of the brain that becomes active and more suggestible part of the brain that isn't active during sleep or awakeness. So it has its own state, which is very similar to daydreaming. But it's a very pleasant state where the client's in control. And if you put a suggestion in their mind that wasn't relevant, they would just open their eyes. You know, you can't make someone stop smoking if they don't want to stop smoking and their partner wants them to. It's not going to happen. So they're in full control. The particular technique which we use with Pauline is to access that memory. So we ask them to go back to that memory. So they're in full control of their faculties and they're going back to that memory. And then we use a reversal technique where we play the movie that they remember backwards. And then at the same time, we set up a safe place. So we ask them to choose, you know, somewhere that they would be comfortable, like a beach, or maybe I had a client in this week that said he chose his sofa. He likes to relax in his sofa. Other people choose somewhere outside. So you build up this safe place, and then you take them back to that memory. You do some reversal technique, which you're playing the movie backwards and then taking them back to the safe place. So you're almost hijacking the safe feelings and then switching them for the traumatic feelings. So when they think of that memory, it's not as traumatic. You're desensitizing that memory so they don't set off the fight or flight response again. So I'm making it sound very simple, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. But basically, that's what happens.
How does it feel now, Pauline? Do you think about those memories of the crashes and stuff?
No, much less. And to be honest, I want to forget also about it. I think now it's also time to, you know, to leave this in the past. No, but I know that there were a lot of feelings around it, which is, for example, I was scared if I walk and the bike will pass very next to me, very close, I would get scared. Like I will have some adrenaline coming for no reason. There is no reason. If I ride and I see my shade coming very fast on the side, I will again. So for a long time, I had still a lot of fight responses with small details like that are related to the event because we were a group, because it was fast, and yeah. So yeah, I was scared to walk or run or bike next to people because I was scared that I would harm someone next to me because of the first accident. So yeah, so I had that for a very long time. And yeah, slowly all this start to fade. Finally, I feel like I'm finally in control of my body again.
Why memories like this one, they don't fade? They stay there. Well, what's the characteristic of these memories? I mean, they become so tangible at a certain point that they become part of your lives.
Yeah, well, normally memories do fade. Normal memories, they, you know, childhood memories without trauma, they're so distant. But some memories where there is a trauma, where there's a shock, can get they get trapped. We call it a trap node. So in the case of post-traumatic stress, if you think of I've worked with a couple of soldiers in the past who on different occasions, something happens traumatic, they see something happen, or there's death, or a bomb goes off, then what happens is a lot of cortisol gets released in the body, and the hippocampus would normally communicate to the amygdala, but the cortisol interferes with that. So you can get this trapped memory with the emotion. So, you know, there's the expression, time's a great healer. Well, it doesn't work sometimes when there's a trauma. So when the body goes into this very frightened state, produce a lot of chemicals and it locks in. And that's where you can see that, you know, even years afterwards, someone can be walking along the road and a car backfires and makes a loud noise. And that person could be down on the ground and they're back in Vietnam, for instance, you know, thinking it's a bomb gone off and their memory has been triggered again. So normally memories do get processed and time is a great healer. We forget things. But when there's trauma, when you go into this very strong fight or flight response, and you can imagine when going over the handlebars, you know, going over the handlebars while a bike's stationary is scary enough, but at the sort of speeds that Pauline was reaching, to suddenly go over and break bones, that would have been very traumatic. So a lot of cortisol and the fight or flight response would have been triggered, and then you get this trap node. And so it locks in. And when you have a trauma that locks in, you can literally be years down the road and it can be like happened yesterday. So, and we have to ask the client, you know, go back to that memory and how does it feel? And if they say things like, it's like it happened yesterday, it's like, it's, you know, it's clear in my mind, then we use another technique called eye movement desensitization reprocessing, where we ask the client to go back to that memory and think about the memory, see what they saw, hear what they heard. Do you remember, Pauline?
Yeah.
Feel what they felt, and purposely get them to go back to that memory. And then at the same time, we use this sweep technique across their eyes. Sometimes we use sound or we can tap them, but I like this technique where across the eyes, so they're looking left to right like that, and you get them to purposely then access that memory, and you do a number of sweeps. It's definitely recording now, so I want you to go back to the event. I want you to see what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel what you felt. See what you saw. Hear what you heard. And feel what you felt. Okay, close your eyes, process. And the person that discovered this, Shapiro, back in, I think it was 1987, she was going through a very difficult time. She was a psychologist, and she was in a park, and she was looking at the trees, she was looking around, and she noticed that the feelings that she had about this event that she had experienced, the content started to dilute. And she found after the walk that she didn't have the same feelings about this. So she started to investigate this, and she set up a number of studies, and she created this technique, which we now know as EMDR, which is used all over the world. The World Health Organization uses it. FBI, CIA, people in the tsunami in Thailand, a lot of people used it to desensitize and move the trap nodes of memory to allow them to heal. So moving the eyes in these sweeps for a long period of time, you know, the practitioner that does it, their hands can really ache, and the person's eyes can start to ache as they're using the muscles left to right constantly. But by thinking about that memory, they're processing that memory in a different part of the brain, which allows those emotions to move on. And so, like they should do, like a normal memory. So it actually starts to heal, and in time, the trauma is no longer there, and it fades into the mind like an old memory. So Pauline's memories now will, as time goes on, it'll just become a distant memory. And I think we've done half a dozen sweeps, if I remember, Pauline, and each sweep I'd ask you, just go back to that memory. Do you remember that there was a time when I just watched you, and I said, just go back to the memory, and I remember that look on your face. You were quite puzzled, weren't you?
Yeah, I remember I had to really go and was like, okay, I have to go and search for that memory, access the memory. It wasn't like present as it used
Something
to.
changed. I could see on your face something changed after that sweep that either amused you or you found it puzzling. There was this look on your face, and that made me smile. I could see that you were beginning to disengage from the memory, and it happened quite quickly as well. And everyone's different because we all process memories differently anyway. So one person might take twice as many sweeps as we did with you, and others it happens quicker. It was good that in that particular memory it happened quite quickly with you, but it can be puzzling to the person that when they can't access those feelings around the memory.
Accessing the memory now, we've done a few of these sweeps. What happened in the last sweep?
I was at the start of the event, but I could not access. It was just blocked.
Are you finding it more difficult to access that memory now?
Yeah.
It's not happening?
No, I could not access during the 3 times. Not once I could access the memory.
And let's say 20 minutes ago when you did the first sweeps, could you access the memory then?
Yeah.
And so you're finding it more difficult to access the memory?
Yeah.
Okay, just sit back and close your eyes now. And try and access the memory.
Nothing.
What are you getting?
I was back at the parking when I was getting ready before that ride.
Okay.
So it's 7 goals, yeah.
Right, so there's been a shift, something's happened.
Yeah.
Could you put it into words?
But
Just think, let me put that there.
Because no, I'm thinking now because it's strange because obviously I know what happened, right? I mean, I know I had a bike crash. And I know how, I mean, everyone knows, so I know. But it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's very strange. Because I feel it's not me, it's me, but...
It's like it's detached away from you?
Yeah.
The intensity's been removed?
Yeah, it's like I would say, oh yeah, I remember that girl had an accident because she... Like, I won't say I had an accident. Like, some things like that. It feels like it wasn't me. It's a very, yeah. I don't know, yeah.
It's very what?
It's very strange. I'm thinking maybe it's now, maybe tomorrow.
Tell me again. That's what you should be, like that.
So when I close my eyes, I'm in the memory, so I know what happened. I'm on the bike, and I know that then what should happen. The handlebar would break, but it's not coming, so I'm forcing the memory because I know what's supposed to happen, but it's not coming.
Okay. And previously, when you thought about that memory, what was it like?
Oh yeah, I could really feel myself, like the feeling of the handlebar dropping down.
Okay. Was it more intense before?
Yeah, that few seconds of dropping the things, and then I've been touching the wheels of another rider. So all that emotions were tense, where now I don't reach that emotion.
Right, okay, good.
Do these memories come back ever? Not in the Pauline specific case, but
No.
is there any chance?
No.
New trauma, new trauma, yes.
Yeah, if
Good.
let's say, God forbid, fingers crossed, yeah, that Pauline was to have another event, then it could trigger, but it would be a new set of memories, a new set of trauma. You're not, once that memory's moved on, you're not going to wake up in 5 years' time and suddenly be frightened anymore or have a fear of falling. It doesn't happen. It's moved on. But can you be re-traumatized? Definitely. And that, like you or any of us could have a trauma and it could affect us. Pauline would be equalized just as much as we are. She'd have to have another trauma to affect her. She's not going to get a relapse. It doesn't happen.
And what do you think she's gonna have? Let's say you have another trauma now. Does she have any protection against the possible consequences? Let's say now she has
But she
learned
has one protection. She has got that metal collarbone now.
Oh yeah,
So-
definitely. So from that point of view, she's protected.
Is
But I'm saying,
does she have a shield because of the work? Not really. No,
Yeah.
no. The work isn't there to protect her for future traumas. The work is solely there to remove the trauma of the one that was locked in. So no, it doesn't protect her in any way. It just normalizes her, and that's all she wanted, wasn't it? Just to get back running. What happens next is down to herself. I suppose, like anybody, they might be a little bit more cautious at times and think, well, I've had an experience. Oh, I'll give you an example. I fell out of a tree when I was younger. I was foolishly chainsawing a tree, and I decided to chainsaw up in the tree. And on the way down, I fell and broke my back. Now, I'd probably ask someone to, I'd probably recruit somebody to do that job. At my age, I'm not going to be going up trees. I've learned to adapt and let someone else do it. In Pauline's case, she might just be a little bit more cautious, but it's not going to affect her life. She's not going to have those emotions and fears and feelings that she was enduring before she came for the sessions that we did with her.
Tools of the Humans. This is your contemporary podcast where you will learn how humans face challenges. Everybody has a story to tell. Listening is knowledge. Let us know if you're interested in sharing your story or if you know somebody who wants to tell theirs. The show is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We spoke about Pauline seeking for help. We spoke about not understanding what was going on. We spoke about hypnotherapy. But did you realize that you were traumatized? I mean, there was something in the back of your mind that you felt like, okay, there is something going on. But the word traumatized, I have received a trauma and now I'm realizing that. I mean, are you conscious when this happened? Now we're going deep into the discussion because in normal life, people are talking about, I was traumatized. I went to the doctor, fixed, blah. Okay, fine. But in the moment, people, they don't understand that. And most probably that's the moment that you're like, okay, I need help. So what, especially from Russell here, what are the things, how do you establish that people are traumatized? How do you recognize and how can you say, okay, this treatment is good because you are traumatized?
Yeah, well, you got to ask the question. Just don't assume that people come in that they're traumatized because they've experienced a horrific event. because many people, they can experience an event which is horrific and not be traumatized. And that often happens. You can have a crowd of people that see an event, a car crash, or be involved in one, and they walk away and they get on with their lives, and just other people are affected. And there's many reasons for that. Some people are more sensitive by nature. So you have to ask a certain amount of questions. Is it affecting you in your daily life? What are the memories that you have, and what is the emotional content of those memories? Because if someone can just think of the memory without any emotional content, they're not traumatized. So don't, as a practitioner, don't assume because somebody's experienced something horrific that they have a trauma. One has to ask a series of questions. Is there any flashbacks, for instance? Are there any nightmares? Are they becoming highly stressed on a daily basis? Or do they appear helpless? Is there sometimes, I mean, not in Pauline's instance, but sometimes there's outbursts of anger, uncontrollable anger. But she was, in Pauline's case, she was experiencing this helplessness. She didn't understand why she couldn't just walk on a floor anymore. And where she works there is a shiny floor that thousands of people go through every day. And there she was, not able to make that journey without fear. So it was affecting her daily life. So you ask key questions, and if it's affecting their life in that way, then there's trauma.
I want to share this this discussion that I had with my commander. I did an episode, it's in Italian, with my commander when I was lieutenant. And for fighter pilots to eject from an airplane, it's a rare case. Ejecting twice is like something like, I don't know, it's very special. So this guy ejected when he was young lieutenant at the squadron because he was hit by another airplane at night, and it tells the story. I mean, it's in Italian. I'm trying to figure out how to translate it, but it's funny in the tragedy. And you know, broken legs is coming down, 6 months to recover, and then finally goes flying again. 4 or 5 years later, the aircraft has a malfunction. He has to eject again. So now he's ejecting again. It's controlled now, so there is no pressure. The aircraft is not falling apart, but it cannot land because it's not safe to land. Now he's ejecting, and the day after, because he didn't break anything, is flying again. So we have on one side people that are trained in a certain way the entire life. So you are trained, probably training, and also can help face trauma and you know, like, okay, come at me because I have big shoulders, and you can go on, and he's still flying with no issues. And he flies, you know, they're called the firefighters airplanes. So it's a very risky job. You know, every now and then these planes they come down because there is, you know, heat and structure damage and stuff like this. So it's curious how we are so made differently, but also how we can code ourselves differently depending on the background that we have, depending on the training that we have, depending on the practitioners and coaches that we find in life that are able to use certain tools, like using hypnotherapy. There is a great book from Alex Bellini. It's called Oltre, Beyond, and this guy is an adventurer, and he crosses the oceans rowing alone for a few times. Okay, not every time was fine. Sometimes he had to go SOS because he couldn't get to Australia, for example. But he used hypnotherapy to code himself in a way that the dangerous situation is coming. I already know what is happening, and I don't have to think about it because I have removed that, you know, the threat of what's happening. I have already gone through. So, yeah, I mean, like, for me as a fighter pilot, listening to these tools that you've been using is really helpful because every now and then you have a student or a pilot that is like, this guy wasn't able to land, or he crashed the airplane on landing, and then from then on, it was not the same. It's not in the culture, aviation culture, to go through this process, but I think really that it's something useful and something that is backed up by science. Like you said, there is science and there is practices that are highly recognized.
Yeah, I think we're all individual, and if 100 people experience the same event, do they all experience the same feelings and intensity? And the answer is no. And you can decondition, which is what you were referring to. I think soldiers during their military training are taught to remain calm and cool in very stressful situations. So they fire blanks at first with new recruits, blank guns, while they're crawling on the floor. And then as they get more experience, they use live ammunition. And unfortunately, some of those people panic and stand up and they can get shot. Does everybody who experiences war come back with post-traumatic stress disorder? And the answer is no. It depends on their own mind and body. The traumatic situation can vary, so their susceptibility can affect them. The event itself can affect them, and that combination. I was working in the UK. There is many fatalities where people commit suicide using trains, and I know this for a fact because I've got relatives that work for the railway, and a driver of a train, once they have experienced 3 fatalities where someone jumps out and their body hits the front of the train, they retire them. Doesn't matter what age. They will have post-traumatic stress, and it doesn't matter how much training. Well, you can't train. You can't part of the training. You can't throw bodies in front of trains. But if you're driving the train and someone jumps in that train, there's not going to be much left of them. But after 3, they're retired. First one can cause post-traumatic stress, and it happens a lot. A lot of people use this method, unfortunately. So I think I don't know as a pilot. I mean, you'd know more than I would, but I suppose one thing I was thinking, is there any training? Do they with jet fighter pilots, do they have machinery, or do they allow them to be fired out of a plane? Is there a piece of machinery that artificially fire? I've seen something somewhere where they're fired up into the air.
Yeah, but not.
And
but
they
not.
is that not real?
It's not the
That's
same.
James Bond.
So yeah, exactly. There is a telescope that is launched in the seat, but the acceleration that you receive is not the same, and the environment is not the same. Talking to, they've been controlled aircraft on the ground, controlled flight into the ground. Okay, people are flying a perfectly functioning airplane into the ground because they don't understand what's going on, or sometimes the airplane is coming down, but you can steer it and you can eject from the airplane. It's design, like this. You get a medal, you get the golden parachute on your, military parade flying jacket if you eject, because it's because these seats are super safe. Right now, but the psychology there, and we go through when you go through the flight safety courses, we are talking about what's happening in the brain of the pilots. Basically, you are in a cozy and comfortable environment, unless it's exploding, unless the airplane is exploding, you got a missile or is on fire. You don't want to get out of the airplane. So there are people finish the fuel, or the engine is not working, the airplane is gliding. They don't get out of the airplane. They hit the ground with a perfectly functioning ejection seat, because it's difficult. Imagine now you're flying 300, 400, 500 kilometers per hour. You're not in control of the airplane anymore. And outside is cold. Outside is dark. Outside is... So there is all these logics going on where the pilots don't want to get out. And that's why people die because they don't eject. So
is it because Is it because the thoughts possibly in those split seconds are, I can pull out of this, or I could correct the problem?
I don't think there is confidence in fixing the problem at the point you know that your engine is not going to start. It's just you are incapacitated to get out, because it is the fear of the unknown, is the fear of something, and then you're like, I still have time.
I just thought there's three things: is fight, flight, or freeze. And in the reptilian brain, when we are in that fight, flight, or freeze response, to fight or to fly is hit that ejector button. But one of the responses is to freeze. It's built into our survival mechanism. So if they freeze in that moment, left brain hemisphere shuts down, they might not actually take the action. It's a possibility. I don't know. I've never met anyone that's.
There is also
we don't know. They're dead, aren't they?
Yeah.
We can't ask them.
Yeah.
But it could be the freeze response.
It is also time dilation thing. So you think like everything is happening quite quickly, but you feel like it's taking forever. So now you lose track of time.
Yeah.
And for example, when you eject, they're asking people, so you ejected, how was this? It took forever. It takes less than half a second to get out of the airplane. And they felt like, probably the danger, probably the fact that they didn't want to get out, and they're looking, they can really narrate whatever happened, like grab the handle, I just pull the handle and stuff like this. They could see everything clearly. It creates like, it compresses in 1 gigabyte of memories in one small small USB card that it stays in your brain. It's crazy, but really, it's these are interesting tools that I'm gonna send you somebody, Russ, to be fixed.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I will do my best. So how's things, Pauline, now? Are you back training?
Yeah, well, as you know, I've never really stopped, right? Even during that time. Even the time I could not really walk, I was still going out and trying to do some things.
How's the walking now?
Oh, the walking is perfectly fine now.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, and even the running, it's getting better because, I don't have all those fight responses all the time for nothing. So finally, I can control again my body, and I feel also that all those level of cortisol and everything is also a bit lower. So yeah, life is good again.
Onwards and upwards. You got to spring.
Yeah. I mean, I've never stopped, and obviously that would never stop me from doing anything. It was just making things more difficult for me. But stopping wasn't the question, right? And I had to go and use all your tools, so I had to go out and run and walk, and so but I'm glad I'm glad I met you, and I'm glad we worked together. I'm also happy you came with me out, and because sometimes it's also hard to explain, right, what's happening. Even you are aware, but sometimes it's hard, or I forgot some small details that are actually quite important for you. So also you, I think, coming out with me and running with me a bit as well. I'm sorry about that.
I think sometimes you have to, when you're dealing with a phobia, it's something I've always done. It's not enough to do the work in the office. I've got to get out from behind the desk and enter the situation, whether it's an elevator phobia or dog phobia, or in your case, the running and walking. I need to get into the situation, because what happens is when you're with somebody and they experience that phobic response, they will tell you things that they're thinking that they won't necessarily tell you when they're relaxed in the office. And it's those ha-ha moments that someone will tell me exactly what's going on. So in an elevator once, I had a lady and she said, I feel I'm going to suffocate. Now, she didn't tell me that in the office, but when we were in the elevator, she felt she was going to run out of air, which was not real. It wasn't rational, but that was enough for me to then work with her on the next session. So when you were out there running, you were sharing things with me that you didn't necessarily share because you didn't know. You were thinking it. Often our thoughts that we have they don't come to the surface conscious thoughts. They're worries and concerns that are they're covered by the emotion. So someone with a phobia, they focus on the emotion, not what they're thinking that drives the emotion. So a lot of the thoughts that you were having were irrational, but you didn't know you were having them. So you do have to get out. Well, I prefer to get out with the client in the situation so I can dismantle those belief structures, either there at the time or later in the next session. So yeah, it's and it got me out of the office as well, which was nice. It was a struggle for me keeping up with you and asking you questions at times, but I'm sure I lost a few calories along the way. Maybe.
Russell, this is your signature, right? When people come to see you, you go through physically to see what they're passing through in the specific situation they are talking about. So if somebody is afraid to jump in from an airplane, you're gonna go there with them?
Yeah, of course I would. Yeah, right. When someone has a fear and it's affecting their life, then I do what it takes. It's I'm a very my approach is very mechanical. Is I roll my sleeves up and I lift the bonnet and look underneath. I want to get involved. So yeah, there's been times where I had people that had a flying phobia, and you know, Joe Thompson, I went back to England with him on the plane. So I'll never forget, there was a young boy I worked with. He wanted a puppy, and his mom said he's so frightened of dogs, and not ferocious dogs, but just dogs, that he ran into the road when he saw this dog on the pavement, and the car nearly ran him over, and he really wants a puppy. And I remember acquiring a Rottweiler, you know, a big dog, and bring him to my office and desensitized him around a Rottweiler dog. After that, he was fine with the Rottweiler, and then he eventually got his own puppy, and he brought the dog in to see me. Yeah, I think you know, I'm passionate about what I do, and you have to go the extra mile to get the results. And I'd be out. If there was a parachute and a spare one, yeah, I would do it if it was needed. I love a challenge, and it's nothing better than hearing, like we've just heard with Pauline, that life is back to normal, and she's getting on with that life that she holds dear to her, which is a life of adventure and exercise. No one wants to hear that she's stuck in an apartment because she can't go out because of fear of walking. And if you didn't deal with it, as I say to most people that I meet, if you don't deal with a phobia, it doesn't go away on its own. It usually gets worse, because when you avoid the normal trait of a phobic is they avoid the situation, the stimulus, whatever that stimulus is, whether it's a balloon or a dog or walking, they avoid it because they feel they can't cope. And each time they avoid it, the belief is, I can't cope again. So the fear grows. So if a phobia doesn't get sorted out, it becomes worse. Avoidance makes it worse. And what do people with phobias do? They avoid.
Pauline, thank you very much for showing up again to Tools of the Humans. It's always a pleasure to hear female voice in this show. Too many boys. And Russell, thank you very much for co-hosting this episode. Let's see what the future brings us in terms of tools. Today you spoke about hypnotherapy, EMDR, and how you recognize traumas and how you fix phobias. Thank you very much, and we will talk soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.